حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa natubu ilayh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi at-tayyibin wa tahirin wa ashabihi al-muqarrabin ila yawm ad-din wa ba'd. Ibadallah, usikum wa nafsi bi taqwallahi wa ta'atihi faqad faza al-muttaqun. Ibadallah, qala Allahu fi muhkami tanzinihi ba'da a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها قال أن يحيي هذه الله بعد موتها فأماته الله 100 عام ثم بعثه قال كم لبثت؟ قال لبثت يوما أو بعد يوم قال بل لبثت 100 عام فلينظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنه وينظر إلى حمارك ولنجعلك آية للناس وانظر إلى العظام كيف ننشزها ثم نكسوها لحما فلما تبين له قال أنا أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أو كالذي مر على قرية, or the one who passed by the qarya, the village, the town. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not wish to specify who the person is that was passing and which village or which town it was that they were passing. But most mufassirun, or the majority, are of the view that that person in question is Uzair alayhi salam. And the qarya, the village, the town in question is Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, Bayt al-Maqdis. And فقال أن يحيي هذه بعد موتها أن يحيي الله هذه this is why I got my notes. قال أن يحيي هذه الله بعد موتها. He says, Uzair, assuming it's say we operate Uzair alayhi salam, how is this? Anna, how? How would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now إذ مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها خاوية على عروشها. So this village, it was خاوية, mean خالية, that it was empty, abandoned, and it was in a state of extensive disrepair, is such that the sides of the buildings had fallen on top of the roof. So when a building is left to decay, the first thing that usually falls down is the roof. because it's been in decay for a while now and abandoned for a while, that even the foundations of the building have also fallen down and fallen on top of the roof. So this is the state that this village, Bayt al-Maqdis, was in, and it is said that the ruin was the result of its destruction by Bukht Nasr. Bukht Nasr in Arabic, in English, I looked it up, it's easier for me to say in Arabic. If you look up Bukht Nasr, you'll know, Persian king who destroyed it, and he burnt all the Torahs for whatever reason it was at the time. So it was in a state of ruin. So Uzair is asking, how would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how would you repair this? How would you return it to its glory after being in such a state of ruin? So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? So that's the question. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did He do? He took Uzair's life for 100 years. He said, I will put you to death, I will take your life, you will die, and you will remain dead for 100 years. And then, after the 100 years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought him back to life. And it's not the resurrection of Qiyamah, obviously. It is an ayah, it is a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that transcends the laws of nature. So it is this verse, this sign of Allah's authority and His absolute power. Okay. So the question here, what's interesting, is that Uzair asked about the village. How can the village in such a state of ruin, how can it ever come back to its former glory? Did Allah answer him directly? Allah didn't answer his question really, not in the way that one would expect. But what He did was, He took his life instead. What's the correlation? Why is it that Allah is taking his life and He's asking about the village? Because when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when He replies, He will always give an answer that is better and beyond what we can ever imagine. He asked about the village, which is humanly possible. Humans could come back and repair the Bayt al-Maqdis and return its people. It's possible. So Allah replied with something greater than that. You're asking about a village? I'm going to show you about your soul, your life, human beings. I can stop it. I can break the rules of nature because I created it. And that will be how I answer you. It will always be better than what we expect. So during that time of 100 years, it is said in the tafsir of Ibn Kathir that within 70 years, people had returned and Bayt al-Maqdis was back to its glory. Okay? And it is said also in the tafsir of Ibn Kathir that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought Uzair back to life, the first thing He brought back was his eyes, so that he could see the answer to his question before the rest of himself was formed. All right. And then there's another question here. Why would Uzair, why would he ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how would this village be returned to its glory? Is it that he does not believe in Allah? Is it that he questions Allah's authority? Why ask the question? That is because this question is not coming from Iman. He has Iman in Allah's authority. He has Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power. But he wants to see how. And when you so this is a transition from the terminology in Islam, from ilm al-yaqeen, knowledge of certainty, to ayn al-yaqeen, to be able to see that certainty. And the reason for this, as is in the verse, the next one, وَلَكِنْ لِتَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي, in the reference to Ibrahim alayhi salam, is that so that he can see the beauty and marvel in the wisdom and power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree at work, you have a greater appreciation for it. So you excel, you advance, you elevate in your iman. So he wanted to grow in his iman, he wanted to grow in his yaqeen, he wanted to grow in his shukr, in his appreciation and gratitude, in that surrender of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is what he wanted. He wanted to have that increased devotion to his Rabb, to our Rabb, based on seeing now just how powerful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And that, by the way, is a beautiful thing that we can all do, inshallah, in different capacities, as we will see. So, فأماته الله 100 عام ثم بعثه قال كم لبثت قال لبثت يوما أو بعد يوم. Then Allah asked him, how long have you gone away? How long will you dead for? And Uzair says, it was 1 day or just a little bit of the day. But he's gone for 100 years, right? But how is it that he answered 1 day or part of the day? In the tafsir, they say that when he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this question, it was the beginning of the day. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returned him to life, it was the end of the day. So he doubted. He looked at his fruits, the fruit that he carried. He looked at the drink that he possessed, which was a form of juice he had. And he saw that it had not rotten, it had not spoiled. So based on his reading of the circumstance, and he's like, it's either been a short while because my fruit haven't spoiled, and it is said it is grapes and figs, and asir, a juice. Right? It hadn't spoiled, so it kind of been a long time. So either I've slept and it's just the next day, or it's just a few hours from when I asked the question. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَانظُرْ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِكَ وَشَرَابِكَ لَمْ يَتَسَنَّ. He says, okay. Now Allah is saying, look, he's showing the argumentation now, the reasoning process. Look at your fruits, your food and fruits and juice. They haven't aged. Okay, all right. That would support half a day or part of a day, or 1 day or a part of a day. And then he says, then look at your donkey. Look at the donkey, and what was left was just bones. So meaning that the 100 years has passed, right? Because the evidence is that this donkey has died, and it has remained dead for such a long time that all its flesh has decayed and turned into dust, and whatever's left is just bones. Just bones. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is illustrating the magnificence of his power and authority. The same things. He had the juice, he had the fruits and the juice, and he had the donkey at the same time. But for one, Allah stopped time. The other, Allah subhanahu, let time do what he can do, what it does. To illustrate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-qabid wa al-basit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one, if he wishes, he will withhold what he likes. So he will withhold, bring back the time, you may say. Al-basit, let it extend, let it go. He's the one who will give the rizq, and he will the one will take as he pleases. And the laws of nature, which he decreed, he is not subject to them. He can do what he likes. All right, next one. قال لم يتسنى وانظر إلى حمارك ولنجعلك آية للناس. And that we will make you an example, we will make you an ayah again, a verse, a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning that his presence now will be evidence of the power, the authority, the lordship, the godship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the one and only God. Okay. How is that so? That is because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally suspended time for him. So over 100 years, he did not age. And then he returned to the village, or he went into the village, and it is said that he used to have a servant. So he found the servant, and the servant is all old and aged, and that time they lived for more than our lifetimes now. And she had, her eyesight had gone. So he asks the lady about Uzair, and she says, Uzair left 100 years ago and has never returned. And he says, I am Uzair. And he says, if you are Uzair, then Uzair had certain signs. And one of them was that he was mujab da'wah, is that when he gave dua, Allah answered him. So give dua to Allah and ask him to return my sight. So he gave dua, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returned her sight, so she could see him, and she saw that it was Uzair. And then, subhanallah, she said, then they go together to his son. And his son had aged. 100 years had passed, is old, an old man, and his father is much younger, or looking at this, much younger looking than the son. Then he says that I am Uzair, and he says, if you are my father, then my father had a sign. And that was between the shoulder blades, the sign of the prophets, which is a mark that they had. So he had a mark there between his shoulder blades. He showed him and he saw it. And then he says, okay, more evidence, I need more evidence. Before, when the Baytul Maqdis was destroyed by Bukhtanasar, he also burnt all the Torahs, burnt them all. But there was some of the evidence, some of the, the lineage of Musa alayhi salam, the legacies, it said his asa, the tabut and others, that they were kept secret, hidden, that's the one. And there was one copy of the Torah that was buried. And my father knew where that location was. So if you're my father, go find it. And he went and got it. And he says, this Torah, here it is. And I have memorized its content. Because there are 4 people who memorized the Torah. Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Uzair alayhi salam, and it is said Yusha ibn Nun. Yusha ibn Nun, if you don't know who he is, when Musa alayhi salam was with his qawm in the Sinai, he passed away during that time. But after the Sinai, it is said that Yusha ibn Nun took over the leadership of the Bani Israel at the time. Okay, so he is one of the guided, inshallah. So 4 people who had memorized the Torah. So then he started reciting the Torah from his memory, and they knew that he is Uzair. So how is it now that he, وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ, and we will make you a sign of Allah among people. People can now see for themselves, in front of them, that Allah has broken the rules and the laws of nature and the universe, because He is the one who owns it. And that evidence is standing right in front of you. This is his son who is old, and this is the father who is much younger. So this is an evidence. And why? Why is it? What is the benefit of that? Again, when you know something, you have a certain level of certainty. But when you know it and you experience it, and you see for yourself the truth of that which you know, it is something different. Again, what is an example of that? Salat. We know the ahkam of salat. We know when we have to pray. But when you pray, you can see the significance of how we are closest to Allah when we are in salat. You can see, and you've been doing it for a while now, you can see for yourself just how salat benefits you. You can see for yourself how you are brought back to the right path through salat. And people who have prayed, people who pray, they know this. So they have additional layer of yaqeen, if you will, because they can see the truth of Allah's hidayah. Allah has explained this in the Quran and through the Prophet ﷺ and the Sunnah. And you can see it now. You've experienced it. You yourself are witness to it. So that gives you a level of conviction, a level of iman that is different to a person who has not experienced it. And this is so very important because you never know, we do not know what comes tomorrow. We do not know how Allah will test us for sure. We know that. How Allah will test us, we do not know. So when we have strong faith, verified faith, as some of my friends would like to claim, to word it, which is a very beautiful phrasing, then your ability, your potential, your likelihood to remain steadfast despite the turmoil of your environment and your circumstance is much greater than a person who's only, just in here, but not in here. Okay? So this is among the wisdoms. And the last thing, we will finish this inshallah. وَانظُرْ إِلَى الْعِظَامِ كَيْفَ نُنْشِزُهَا. Then, O Uzair, look at the idham, the bones of your donkey. Nunshiz narfa, how we put them back together. So, in front of his eyes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the bones of the donkey to come back together. So they reformed the skeleton in front of his eyes. And then after that, the naqsuha lahma, we will then dress it in flesh, but with everything that comes before it as well. That comes, I'm not in the medical field, so just excuse the rudeness of my understanding, I should say. Put the blood system in, the circulatory system, then build the muscles in there, and then dress it with flesh, and then put the skin on top of it, and then send the malak, send the angel to come down to breathe the ruh into it. Then it became in front of his eyes. So he asked about a town. He asked about the town. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered about how he restores life. And what's more compelling on top of this is that here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is restoring life. He's bringing it back. He's not initiating life. Initiating life is harder, and nothing's hard for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is hard. It would be harder under normal circumstances, under normal standards, to initiate something than to redo it. It's coming from an existing model, an existing mold. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing his power, right? But we ourselves, who are evidence of the initial creation, we haven't died yet. We will be resurrected. So whoever is able to create you from nothing to begin with, it is easier for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create you once again. Alhamdulillah. أقول ما تسمعون واستغفر لي ولكم. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu Rasulil Ameen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. So this reference to oneself, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered Uzair by taking his life and returning it, rendering the evidence of Allah's authority and power not something external. It is not something that you have to look for, search for, travel far for, difficult to discover, must endure all sorts of hardship. No. Allah's signs are right in front of us. We ourselves are a sign of Allah. That we were created from nothing is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning what? Is that the evidence, you may say, the material for yaqeen, for certainty, for firm belief, is ourselves. And when we ourselves are the evidence of that belief, of that yaqeen, then it is something that is undeniable. You know who you are. You know you are real. You know you exist. You. Somebody else, it could be fake, it could be a robot, could be AI, could be this, could be that, whatever. But you yourself, you know who you are. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. In yourselves are the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you not see? So you do not need to look far. Al-Ghazali, rahmatullah alayhi, he has a beautiful book called Kimya al-Sa'ada, The Alchemy of Happiness. And in it is a very, I think, very useful reflection of the beauty of Allah's design within the human being. And he's talking about the thumb and things like this, or the human being, the human body, its physique, and how it is evidence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power. So it is very useful the more one reflects about themselves again, where they will be able, by Allah's tawfiq, to see the design of the Creator in the creation, inshaAllah. Another thing, okay, why are we talking about this as well? Is that, as you know today, or as you know these days, for reasons known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Bayt al-Maqdis, the Holy Land, is one that has been subjugated by those, who don't treat it well, and those who are undeserving of it. And there's a lot of destruction, and there's a lot of ruin, in ways you think, how can something like this be restored? How can such destruction be repaired and then advance to levels of grandeur and splendor? How can a land be liberated and returned to its rightful custodians? The legacy of Musa, the legacy of Isa, the legacy before that of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the legacy of every Nabi, the legacy of Islam. Just as Uzair asked, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown the answer ourselves, from with us as the answer. Allah created us. He is so very powerful to return it, and that is easier for Him. So do not despair. Do not be overcome by worry and despair in the power and the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And do not despair, and do not undermine the importance of dua. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, فيما أخرج إمام الترمذي عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ادعوا الله وأنتم موقنون بالاستجابة فاعلموا أن الله لا يقبل الدعاء من قلب غافل له. The Prophet ﷺ instructs us that when you give dua, be certain. We're talking about certainty in faith, yeah? Be certain. That's what we've been talking about, certainty of faith. Be certain that Allah will answer. Be certain of it. Ask whatever you like. Be certain that Allah is capable of doing it within, all right, as we shall see, within what is reasonable. Don't ask to be a prophet, okay? That's not going to happen. Right. So ask Allah whatever you like, and be certain that He will answer. Do not have doubt. Just as Allah did indeed restore Bayt al-Maqdis at that time. Just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returned the life of Uzair after 100 years, suspended time in one case and let time proceed in another. Do not give dua and you have فَإِنَّ and know that Allah does not accept the dua from the heart that is ghafil, that heedless. You are asking like this, not really caring, not really aware what you are asking. Playful. Again, you're not serious about it. So know that if that is your dua, you're not serious, then don't expect an answer. And فيما أخرج الإمام مسلم عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يستجاب لكل دعاء لا يزال يستجاب لكل دعاء ما لم يدعو بالإثم وقطيعة الرحم ما لم يستعجل. The Prophet ﷺ says, your dua will continue. He didn't say it will be answered. It will continue to be answered. It means it's all being answered, and it will continue to be answered in so long as you do not ask for something sinful. And you do not ask for suspending or cutting the ties of kin, the relationships between kin, blood. And that you are not in haste, you are not in a rush. Faqila, and it was said to the Prophet ﷺ, Mal istijal, what is this to be in haste? So the Prophet ﷺ answered, يدعو ويدعو ويقول يدعو ويدعو ثم يقول لم أرى يقول دعوت ودعوت ولم أرى يستجيب لي فيستحسر عند ذلك ويدع الدعاء. So they were asked. They asked the Prophet ﷺ, what does it mean to be in haste? And the Prophet ﷺ says, when a person says, I keep giving dua, but I don't think Allah will answer me. Meaning that Allah hasn't answered you in what you can see. And then you lose. You stop giving dua. So in that, within what happens, you say, you feel like a loss. You feel hopeless. That's it. You feel hopeless. And as a result, you stop giving dua. Remember this. You ask, Allah will answer when it is best for us. We asked one thing, like Uzair. He asked one thing. Allah gave him something slightly different, but answered him in effect. So you ask for one thing, it does not mean that Allah will give you exactly what you ask for, in the way that you expect. But whatever Allah does answer, and He will answer, then know that it will always be better than what you can imagine. It will always have greater benefit in ways we do not perceive, because it is from our Creator, and it is from the one without limits. So let us not lose hope in the importance, in the power of dua. And let it be one that emanates from a heart that is sincere, that is genuine, that has absolute conviction that Allah indeed can do that which we ask, and will do in a way that He sees fit. That type of dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us such beautiful, strong du'as. We'll give dua, then we ask people to come close. Inna Allahu wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا لا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا. ربنا زدنا علما. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. سبحانك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Please come forward, inshallah, and there will be a few announcements after Salat, inshallah. So do me the courtesy and don't run off straight away. All right. Feet to feet, shoulder to shoulder. Please fill out my right, so the far wall. It's okay. But Ahmed, come. Just fit in here, you'll be right. Bismillah. Just squeeze in. Bismillah. أقيم الصلاة رحمكم الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ألم تر إلى الذي حاج إبراهيم في ربه أن أتاه الله الملك إذ قال إبراهيم ربي الذي يحيي ويميت قال أنا أحيي وأميت قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأت بها من المغرب فبهت الذي كفر والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها قال أنى يحيي هذه الله بعد موتها فأماته الله 100 عام ثم بعثه قال كم لبثت قال لبثت يوما أو بعد يوم قال بل لبثت 100 عام فلينظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنه وينظر إلى حمارك ولنجعلك آية للناس ولينظر إلى العظام كيف ننشزها ثم نكسوها لحما فلما تبين له قال أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. وإذ قال إبراهيم ربي أرني كيف تحيي الموتى قال أولم تؤمن قال بلى ولكن ليطمئن قلبي قال فخذ 4 من الطير فصرهن إليك ثم اجعل على كل جبل منهن جزءا ثم ادعهن يأتينك سعيا واعلم أن الله عزيز حكيم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers, allow me to introduce to you, inshallah, our brother Ahmed Bakr, who's new to Australia, new to the Gold Coast, from Iraq, speaks Swedish and Arabic and a bit of English. And he's new here and he's just got married, and he's asked me to see if there's any opportunities for work. So if anybody knows any opportunity, please come and see him, inshallah, and introduce yourselves and welcome him to our community. And we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow us to be his Muslim family away from his family, inshallah. Also we have, yes, inshallah. Also we have a youth camp that's being organized for the school holidays. So the flyer is out there on our WhatsApps. Please see Brother Abdurrahman. Abdurrahman, if you can stand up, please. Anybody interested? It's for boys and girls. Please see Pa Abdurrahman if you would like to have more details. We also have a march. I think it's tomorrow, is it? Is tomorrow the 2nd? Yeah, tomorrow, 4 p.m. at 4 p.m., yeah? At Surfers. Again, the details are on the WhatsApp. Please support it, inshallah. And I know we've been getting a lot of WhatsApps, but you should be very happy that the Muslim community is active. So don't dismiss them and don't complain about them, but be happy and give dua that the Muslim community is active. And we also have another event on Sunday at the Islamic school for a fundraiser for activities for children and whatnot. So please support that. Again, the flyer is on the WhatsApp. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Last thing, actually, I'll be gone for a few weeks. And remember that the Muslims are brothers. And it is important that you continue to introduce yourself, give salam to the people you know and the people you do not know. Introduce yourselves, make each other feel welcome. And I expect this of the people who are regular. Our locals, I expect this of this, inshallah. And it is important to build the community that way. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. After I was doing that.